Okay, so we're going to take another look at square root functions. This one's slightly different than the first video that I made because the very first video had the entire expression under the square root, and this one only has the x under the square root. So we do have to pay attention to that in order to understand, the domain, the leftmost point there. So with this one, remember, it has to be greater than or equal to 0 for what's under the square root sign, which is only x. So x has to be greater than or equal to 0. So my leftmost point is actually going to be 0, 0. So then I can go through and plug it in. It's not going to be 0, 0 because I'm going to plug 0 in here, and I get 3 times the square root of 0, which is 0, plus 1, which is 1. So my leftmost point will be 0, 1. I misspoke there. So this is going to be my leftmost point. So it's not going to go any farther to left than that. Now I need 3 more points because remember, that's part of what ALEKS requires here. So I can go through and I can plug in any numbers I want, but again, I did this on the last video as well. I usually pick squares because as long as I'm taking the square root of a square, I know I'm going to end up with a whole number. I don't have to deal with decimals or anything like that. If it's a terminating decimal, then you can use the point feature on ALEKS. But if you set yourself up for that to use squares, it does make it a little bit easier in my opinion. So I'm going to plug in 1 and 4 and 9 because they're all squares. So those are, my first 3 squares. So if I plug in 1 here, I have 3 times the square root of 1 plus 1. So square root of 1 is 1. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1 is 4. So there's my first point. And then I have f of 4 equals 3 times the square root of 4 plus 2. So the square root of 4 is 2. So 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So there's my third point. My second of the 3, but third point technically because my leftmost point. And then I have my last one here. So I have 3 times the square root of 9 plus 1. So the square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1 is 10, which brought me all the way to the edge there. It didn't quite line up because I didn't use my line tool very well there, but when you do this on ALEKS, once you click the graph a function feature, it's definitely going to do this, perfectly for you. You're not going to worry about having to have it off just a little bit like that. Okay, so that was just another practice in square root functions. This was just outside with pieces outside of the square root instead of everything being under the square root sign. So I hope that helped, and I will see you in the next video.